All right, hope you've been having yourself a beautiful week. Hello and welcome to Tipping Point. My name is Nick Mudimba. It's a week that many Kenyans are actually tensed, and so much is happening as far as the COVID-19 infections are concerned in this country, 31 in number. And of course, today, 3 more infections have been confirmed. Of course, it's something that many Kenyans didn't expect this thing to be rising up. Curfew talks, of course, starting tomorrow from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. And that means now Kenyans should be settled in their houses from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. You risk going out, and of course, you'll meet the full force of the law. In studio, I'm not alone, and of course, Jacqueline Musinya Nyaberi. Of course, I'll just love to say she's a PhD holder in public health. And of course, Bwana Mark Bichachi is actually here with me. Karibu sana Bwana Mark, and of course, Jackie for coming today. And just on a sad note to begin, because now Kenya has confirmed the first death of COVID-19, a 66-year-old patient who was admitted at Aga Khan Hospital. And this is scary because no Kenyan expected all this. But again, yes, those are the results that the COVID-19 is doing globally. But I'll first of all rope in Jacqueline, because now you're a public health specialist, and first death in this country, something we hope to, with the fact that we were told a patient 2 recovered, but now, boom, first death in Kenya.
Yeah. It's not good news at all. And first of all, we just want to say our condolences to the family that has just been affected, but to all Kenya, because this is a global issue. It is a scenario where we have been looking forward to see the patients who had been infected to heal, and that could give us quite a lot of hope. At this point in time, yes, it's a situation that is really causing panic, I'm sure, to most of all of us, but then it's also sending a message home that the deaths, as far as the coronavirus is concerned, is real. We need to take the precautionary measures as quickly as possible. Let us play the role that we need to play at the individual level, at the family level, at the community level, and entirely as Kenyans, we have a role to play.
Absolutely.
We need to stand with every other person. We need to be there for one another. We need to stand even with the families that have already been affected and infected. But then for the Kenyan who is alive, can we take the precautionary measures? Let me wash my hands. Let me keep the social distancing like we have been told. Let us oblige by the rules and regulations that have been given by our government. The Ministry of Health is really trying. And much as they have put all the measures that they need to put, we are not going to stop coronavirus if I and you don't do what you're supposed to do. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And of course, those are factual sentiments from Jacqueline. And let me rope in Mark Bichachi, because now he's a communication strategist and you've been in this picture for quite some time. And you're appearing on television for quite, let me say, since this pandemic started, you've been trying to escape big time from the screens. But here we got you. Thanks so much for coming. But before you start your politics, Mark, this is a pandemic that today we've had the first death, and it's something not so many Kenyans expected. It has hit hard, and curfew is already, of course, tomorrow. We'll be having a different ballgame in this country. But again, look at how Kenyans are carrying themselves. Are you confident that this will be fought very soon, and of course the war to end very soon?
Well, the problem with our country is we have a population that is used to disobeying law and order. That is our modus operandi. If you think I am lying, look at how we behave with the red lights, whether you're a pedestrian or a motorist. The lights are red, you want to go. The lights are green, you want to stop. And these are the problems that we face. And that's where it's going to bite us, because the kind of disobedience we have as Kenyans is what is going to affect us, because the only way to stop this pandemic is actually to obey the government, which is the one thing Kenyans do not like to do. Now, has the government tried in its communication? By the way, for once, the consistency by which the government has communicated, the rapid response, the answers, they're doing much better than they've handled other crises before. But where the rubber is going to meet the road is in two things: the character of the human being called a Kenyan and the reality of that human being called a Kenyan. There are people who are living hand to mouth. How does that affect their day-to-day earnings? Yes, the president has given a raft of measures which will go a long way in safeguarding those guys who are employed in companies that pay tax and things like that.
Yeah.
But let's remember, a large section of the population is underemployed and is employed in very informal settings. Now, we must then face the reality that Kenya is not the United States and it does not have $2 trillion to give its people. Therefore, what my co-panelists said becomes very important. We need to socially re-engineer a solution for COVID-19. Sure. We need a social re-engineering, not just in terms of our hygiene and how we wash our hands and things like that, but how do we take care of each other in times of need?
Yeah.
You know, we need to start having conversations about how much local content are you going to buy, in terms of, are your soaps going to be made locally? Are you going to order furniture from your local fundi? Are you going to go back to your tailor to make your suit? That's really the question that we need to get to. Absolutely. But before we even get there, the reality hitting Kenyans that, guess what, this is a life and death situation needs to happen quickly. Because remember, this guy came back from South Africa March 13th. It's hardly been 20 days. March 13th, the guy has already passed on. That's how serious it is, which means you could catch it today and tomorrow we are basically burying you. And guess what? 66 is not as old as we imagine it to be. You know, 66 is just a few years past retirement. And let's not forget that, is it in Zambia where their first person to die was 30 years old?
Yes, that's Zimbabwe. Actually.
Yes, Zimbabwe. So let's not take this issue lightly. I think the precautions that are there, you know, wash your hands, don't touch your hands with your face, and things like that are simple, but the kind of civil disobedience and propaganda that Kenyans are addicted to is what is the biggest danger in my opinion.
All right, this conversation is getting interesting and you can be part of it on 22999, our SMS lines for free, and I'll be sampling some of our views as we move on Twitter, Switch TV KE, Twitters, of course, using the hashtag Tipping Point KE, and I promise you I'll be sampling your views because now the country, many of us, let me say of you also, have been trying to campaign for a lockdown. But still, the president said that in case more measures are needed to make sure that Kenyans are safe, they'll be taken. So we're kicking off with a curfew from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. But let's talk about patient 2. This patient recovered. But again, something else is the overshadowing of the recovery with the death has actually brought some kind of tension to many Kenyans. But Jacqueline, looking at this patient 2, we're happy, yes, the patient recovered. But there's so much that goes on in the process of recovery. You know, by the time so many Kenyans are going to the chemists over the counter to buy multivitamins, to buy, let me say, azithromycin, so many things are actually coming in. But look, the patient recovered. Healthcare workers, the human capital in our hospitals manage to make sure the patient recovers. As a public health specialist, this is something very important to give people hope. So what do you think about the recovery process? And of course, death has happened, but let's be positive here, the recovery.
Well, I resonate with you, Nick, very well. It's good to give hope, but at the same time, it's good to live with the reality, because from the reality we get to learn. I must commend the work that the health workers have done. It's not an easy job. Having patients who are all over in the hospital and, you know, they're suffering from this deadly disease. They are also working under conditions that are not very safe for them, but because this is their job, they have decided to be so humane, to be so ethical, to just ensure that they do what they are supposed to do as health workers to support, you know, the patients who are in the hospital and those who have been infected with the disease. We must also appreciate that the government is really trying to ensure that we are able to contain this.
Okay.
It's also important to just let the Kenyans know that actually, globally, and especially in the low and middle income countries where ours is one of them, at the moment the health systems are totally constrained in terms of human resources. And I'm happy the president yesterday announced and said this is a moment that we are going to set some, about I think 1 billion to set aside from UHC so that we can be able, they can be able to employ more healthcare workers. Now that sends a message home that as far as the low and middle income countries are concerned, we are constrained of the, of the resources that are needed for us to be able to contain this disease. And remember, we have other diseases. We are talking of the human resources. We are talking of the health services that need to be delivered. We are talking of the supplies, and thank God we have been able to receive some donation that will really go a long way. But then alongside that, we have a role to play. Can we be in a position to do what we are supposed to do? And I like the way the communication strategist put it very clear to Kenyans that there is one disease that we have, and we need to overcome the disease of disobedience.
Okay, so just hold on right there. We went to the streets of Nairobi, and most of Kenyans out here are hopeful that the recovery has brought some light because it was a bit dark, the curfew is here, but just let's listen into how Kenyans reacted on the recovery.
I am also pleased to announce that numerous other suspects or suspected cases have been found to be negative after rigorous testing. But more importantly, today we have registered our first patient who has fully recovered from this virus. This, fellow Kenyans, is a clear indication that we can and indeed will defeat this virus.
Virusi kupona watu wanapona, lakini pia hatuko sure. Unaona, sababu wanatuambia hakuna tiba na wametuambia amepona aje. Situambia walipona njia hii na hii. Kwa hivyo sisi tunaweza jikinga wenyewe.
Kutuambia kwanza kuna mtu amepona hospitali. Na kwanza mimi nilisherekea. Nilifurahia sana kusikia huyo mtu na nikawa na imani hao watu wa hospitali watapona. Mimi kwa imani yangu mwezi hata 3 weeks hao watu watakuwa wametoka hospitali.
All right, now there's hope, and many Kenyans are saying that indeed recovery is something that they are hopeful this thing will happen. But still, it's something that I must tell Kenyans, and Jacqueline said it very clearly, that we need just to be disciplined, because that's the whole idea of beating this virus. There's no need of a lockdown, because as the direction as it is, we might just go that direction. And when you talk about the disturbance, the economic disturbance will really happen in this country. But Mark, before you take a break, there's something interesting in the recovery hope story. Do you think we'll expect more recovery in the coming days? Again, now the gloomy picture that we just got a few minutes ago will still be consistent?
Well, the thing is, when you look at the statistics, right, that 20% are the ones who will show symptoms, out of which 15% will show mild symptoms and 5% will show serious symptoms. So that Kenyans understand, the problem is not that people will catch this disease. That's not the problem. The problem is a lot of people will catch this disease and then overstock our hospitals. That's the problem. That's what Kenyans are not understanding. You see, if you look at the number of ICU beds in this country, which is what is needed, the patient who died in ICU. So what is needed is ICU access. So let me ask Kenyans who are disobeying everybody, how much money do you have to pay for ICU? That's problem number one. Number two, how many ICU spots do we have? As it is today, if you go to Kenyatta Hospital looking for an ICU bed, you'll be told to hang out over there as they wait for one to be empty. That's the current status of ICU beds in this country. So you can imagine that right now it is easy for patients to recover because they're getting the care they need, because doctors have the equipment and the numbers they need.
All right.
But if we continue this way and more Kenyans are infected, and we just have, let's say, 500 of them going to hospitals seeking intensive care, that's when you will know that we are in very serious trouble. So when you see the CS Health being quite firm with the country, with President Kenyatta declaring a curfew, which he didn't even when Raila Odinga declared himself president, that should tell you how serious this is. So when we understand that, then we will know that the problem is not the 80% who will not be affected or the 20% with mild symptoms. No, no, no. The problem is our healthcare system cannot take it.
All right.
Allow me to just add...
Just before you come in, we are told actually go for a short break, we come back. Now, so a short break it is, but keep on sending your SMSs on 22999 and I'll be sampling your views, because the ignorance so many Kenyans have, they haven't tested the wrath of COVID-19. It comes 14 days, maybe you look good, and then after some time, it can really be catastrophic to your health. And medics are saying that you might recover, yes, but the impact of that kind of a virus in your body will still be felt for a very long time. So 22999 SMS lines, we'll be sampling your views, and remember we'll also be joined by Robert Soy, who's also standing by in the next session right here on Tipping Point. Stay tuned. Right, welcome back to Tipping Point, and I love the way you are sending in your SMSs, because there's so many questions actually to be answered too, because now some questions also for you. But again, Robert Soy has joined us right here in studio, and he's one guy who has the experience in the sporting world. Remember, the under-20, that is World Athletics Championships, were postponed. That were supposed to happen in Kenya, and the Olympic Games, the biggest actually games globally, also postponed. That means there'll be catastrophic ending in terms of even financial and economic angle in terms of the country. And also athletes, they were ready for this event, but now things happen. But let me just sample some of the SMSs, because most of you are asking very legit questions. For example, Ochote Alex, please, I need clarification on this. Can a recovered patient undergo reinfection, and will he or she still be under quarantine after being discharged? Of course, we'll rope that question to Jacqueline. Now, someone else, you didn't mention your name, say rent issues. The government should find a way forward, because most Kenyans live on hand to mouth. That's in relation, of course, to the lockdown issue. Hello and good morning. I agree with you all. Kenyans, and by extensions Africans, are difficult in complying with basic instructions. Today, I saw a Kenyan with this VX Land Cruiser at a Total petrol station somewhere, walk in a supermarket and ignore the sanitizer at the door. To curb their behavior, we need strict measures. A lockdown is the only way Kenyans will learn. A Mark from Nairobi. Nick, I'm Valentin. A question on the patient who recovered. Can he get infected again by the same disease when his body is immune now? Very interesting questions. But before we talk about the sports issue, let's just drop in Jacqueline, because the questions about reinfection, very legit questions here.
Thank you so much, Nick. And I'm glad that Kenyans are asking very, questions, informative questions that can make every other Kenyans to learn. It's good news. It gives us hope that at least one of the patients has recovered. And we also go hand in hand with the statistics that we have. Globally, we have seen people in China die. We have seen others recover. So the question to reinfection, the answer is yes.
You can't be reinfected.
You can be reinfected.
You're not immune to this.
You are not immune to the disease. and even the one who has recovered is not immune to the disease, he is likely to be reinfected, and at the same time, he can be able to infect. And I think that that particular question now takes us back to the aspect of obedience and discipline. Just to realize that much as we are having some of the cases recovering, they're giving us quite a lot of hope. But still, if we do not observe the rules and regulations and the precautions, basic things that we have been given that we are supposed to do, then still we shall be reinfected. We can be reinfected from even the patients that have been given. But I also want to say that even after this patient has been discharged, they are given information on what they need to do, the do's and the don'ts. So we keep on communicating, we keep on educating, we keep on, reminding every other person, whether you have been infected before or not, that still really you can afford to infect other people. So you still need to take the precautionary measures just like any other person.
Okay. So Olympic Games, World Under-20 Championships postponed. Robert Soy is here. I can mention to you 8 years ago, he was my sports editor, and he's one who has actually led me to be where I am today. Thank you, Robert. But again, let's talk about the issues of sports. Athletics is big in this country, and the likes of Eliud Kipchoge, our rugby team, they're all ready for Olympic Games. We were supposed to host one of the global best games. That's the World Athletics Under-20 Championships. But look, it's no longer there, and there's fear. Actually, we might even be snatched that. There's fear. So, what do you think about the impact of all these postponements to our country?
Thanks, Nick. To just go back to that lockdown issue before I touch on that, those events. I have been on the road and it looks like business as usual. So there's a lot of traffic. I don't think anyone is taking precautions. I think it should be reinforced that the lockdown should be effected to make sure that everyone understands what this disease is all about. Secondly, I was watching the governor of Tokyo speaking yesterday in one of the media houses, in one of the media outlets, and she said it had to happen. The Olympics had to be postponed, not cancelled, until 2021. Here it is. They will not lose the clout and they will not lose the money because the insurers have put like $2 billion in place to make sure that when the games come on, the Olympics will run smoothly. When we come home, and please remember in 2008, yes, I covered the Olympics in China. There was a lot of politics from media and the West and their allies that Chinese have, their air was polluted, people can't participate. They almost cancelled the marathon. Haile Gebrselassie was supposed to come. I don't think he was fit enough. He didn't want to come and run. The day of the marathon, he trained.
Wow.
And the air was clean. And Samuel Wanjiru went on to win the Olympics marathon.
Yes.
We need to look at it positively, just to make sure that all these athletes are kept safe. And then when the time comes, they attend those events. It doesn't affect, it's just not the Chinese or Asia. This disease we are talking about, even Kenya. We do not think we can have other athletes come to participate here because of the same issue. They're using the same planes, they're using the same border points. So it has to be cancelled.
Absolutely.
And I think in monetary terms, if there were sponsors who had put money for those particular events, they should they should just make sure they have those budgets still for the events when they come and give the particular hosts.
All right. Now, let's talk about tax relief, because the president was categorical on just to make sure Kenyans survive during these difficult times. And before I rope in Bwana Bichachi, once you were posted or blacklisted on CRB, the president said effectively that's 1st of April, they'll kind of give you space, kidogo, you can take something. And of course, this thing will actually be very, very categorical. But again, the tax reliefs, pay as you earn, reduced so much. And of course, Kenyans are happy about that. And if you're earning actually before 24,000 shillings, that means you'll be 100% exempted. Let's just listen in first to Kenyans what they had to say about the tax relief. Listen.
In sharing the burden occasioned by the present global health pandemic over the duration of the global crisis and commencing immediately, my administration has offered a voluntary reduction in salaries of the senior ranks of the national executive as follows. The President and Deputy President, 80%. Cabinet Secretaries, 30%. Chief Administrative Secretaries, 30%. Principal Secretaries, a reduction of 20%. A 100% tax relief for persons earning a gross monthly income of up to Kenya shillings 24,000. The temporary suspension of the listing with the Credit Referencing Bureau, or the CRB, of any person, micro, small or medium enterprise, as well as corporate entities whose loan account fall due or is in arrears, effective 1st of April 2020. That the National Treasury shall cause the immediate reduction of the VAT rate from 16% to 14%, effective the 1st of April 2020.
Kupunguza bei na VAT. I hope it will translate kwa hizi basic essentials kama food, rent. Hiyo ndo inafanya watu wanawaza sana.
I think rent is a problem to so many people, and a 21-day lockdown, that's Mark from Nairobi, says that will serve two purposes. One, it will help reduce infections by minimizing contact and interaction. Two, those already infected will easily be identified as symptoms will show, thereby enabling them to be treated. And of course, I won't forget one here. You mentioned your name, Wanjala from Kitengela. You say it's a fact that a good number feeding the employed are the self-employed or business people. So if we are the mamambogas close, how are we going to survive? Now, Bwana Mark Bijachi, let's talk about the issue of tax relief, the issue of now a Kenyan to breathe financially for some time. It's effective 1st of April. No one knows for how long, but look at that step taken by the government. What do you think about it?
Number one, it is definitely a major step. It is a major step because, remember, the government has obligations. It has obligations to its workforce, which is the civil service. It has obligations in terms of our security, the army and the police and other such personnel. It has obligation in terms of our healthcare, and it has obligations in terms of debt. So that for the government to reduce any amount of income it could possibly receive, that is a big deal. Okay. That being said, of course, for the majority of Kenyans in the lower income bracket, in the informal sector, such measures do not translate into sense, because there's a lot of people who earn 15, 20, 25,000 shillings and they don't pay tax. So if you give them a tax relief, it really does not convert to them as any benefit. For them, what relief is, especially those who live in urban areas, it goes straight into the question of rent and their consumables which they consume every day, because some of them literally go to work every day and get a meal from the work they did that day. So the question then is, how does the government mitigate against that? Now, that's a bit tricky, because we can go to the strategic grain reserve, but how much grain do we have there anyway, right? Usually we call out to the West to send in aid. They have enough problems of their own. Where is that aid going to come from? So the mathematics that the president and the cabinet has to work through is not mathematics I envy them for having to do. Because the question you've got to ask yourself, what if our Chinese debt falls due in October and we've reduced the tax we are collecting? And at the same time, we've got to pay salaries. So you've got to think about that from one side. But the other side you've got to think about is, what are the industries that are too big to fail? Our tea industry, our flour industry, all of this industry, we cannot survive without them. So what does the government have to do? It has to make sure that the entities that are too big to fail, our top income earners, do not fail, no matter what. Because if we keep getting that money, then the country can recover. But as I said before, the government can only do so much. The willingness of the people to do the right thing is going to be the next thing. And the thing that I propose that should happen is we need to, moving forward, buy Kenya to build Kenya. Okay. That's the only way. So you've got to order a new box for your kid in school from the guy who makes boxes. Okay. You've got to order your suit from the tailor. You've got to buy your mbogas from a mamboga. That's what has got to happen for us to recover.
All right, let's take a short break. But remember, when you come back, we'll be talking about the curfew. It's from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. Was it wise to impose this curfew? Because now we're told GSU and security personnel from all kind of internal security will be enforcing this big time. So if you're found outside at 7:01, my friend, it will be actually a different story. So just try and be disciplined, because as Robert has said, life is normal out there. But keep on sending your SMSs, 22999. I'll be sampling them. Now, all that coming to you after a short break. Keep it Tipping Point. All right, welcome back to Tipping Point. And the SMSs are coming in through thick. And there's one interesting one. I'm a medic from Kerugoya County Referral Hospital. And we have very few protective gears. We are expected to work in unsafe conditions. The solution is a lockdown. So even the medics are afraid. No, tax relief doesn't help me in any way, because I got a young infant, wasn't at work, and my hubby had to work daily for us to get food from tomorrow. I'll be starving to death. My kid needs my milk. How will I survive? Please help me. Switch TV, please help me. Now, some very, very legitimate concerns here. But again, look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is all about fighting the virus. We understand that we are safer without the virus than we solve our problems. But still, these are issues that we'll be talking about. Now, Jacqueline, let's talk about the curfew. Yeah, before we actually come in, that's a very concerning kind of feedback you have.
Before I make my comment on the curfew and my fellow guys in the studio will also do that. I am so much concerned about the medic who have written from Kerugoya about the PPEs, and I will still go back just to drive some sense to Kenyans, and for us to be able to understand how serious it is. Just like Vichachi said, as far as containing the virus is concerned, our resources are so constrained. When a medic is talking about the PPEs, those are, the personal protective gears that are supposed to protect him not to have the virus for himself and not to carry it home. And so he's saying that as a medic, it's a serious concern. And that is why we still need to plead to every Kenyan to ensure that we do what we are supposed to do to protect ourselves, because going to the hospitals might not be a solution for every other person, because the resources are constrained. You see, if the medic is saying, I do not have the PPEs, and someone decides not to, because we all love ourselves, and someone says, I am not going to touch this patient because I do not have this. But I want to believe that if we can be able to work together, having on board the public-private partnership, working with the government, I see some of the strategies that they have put in place to get money from here and there to ensure that we have adequate personal protective gears for all the medics. It's going to be a solution for them, first of all, and of course to all of us. Going back to the curfew, it's not good news. It's unfortunate, to every Kenyan. And probably this is another thing that needs to drive a lot of sense to all of us, how serious the coronavirus is concerned. It is very bad when the president decides and his team, he decides that now, because we are not disobeying, this is what we are going to do. We are making him to put in place measures that he's not supposed to put in place. If we had obeyed, if we decided to be disciplined, if we decided to do what is supposed to be done. But it will be very bad news for a Kenyan, for a father, for a mother, for a young person to be met outside there, and you're beaten up simply because you were supposed to use your brain, obey what the government has said, get home.
Absolutely. Robert, you mentioned FFU. Yes.
Yeah, I've seen in India, I saw a clip in India, the police are on the streets and they're hitting people with clubs or batons. It will happen here. It's not violence, it's just trying to reinforce the curfew. Don't look at it as violence. It's just that some people are very arrogant and rude and they don't want to listen. That will happen to them. Going back to the lady who talked about food, you have to understand something to do with food security. This particular coronavirus has brought in a very interesting aspect to life.
Sure.
People need to go back and start growing their own food.
Okay.
You can grow food in a gunia outside your house. You can keep a chicken, you can rear hens or something for food. You don't necessarily say, I have to go at work, then get money to come. You go to work, yes. Get the money, put it in the bank, but you have to go back to now those traditional things that people have done to make sure your family survives. Please remember, Nicholas, this particular pandemic is being dealt with by the international, by the West and the Chinese in a different way. It is all about artificial intelligence, AI, and that basically is what we are doing. Robotics, cameras, computers, that's where the competition is headed. So we should be looking at domestic issues, to solve domestic issues our own way. Okay. We all know about AI. We all know about NI, natural intelligence vis-a-vis AI. Natural intelligence makes AI. So we need to look at them. All those things, the planes that are flying, it's a lockdown. Yeah. Robots might be working in future. You might not be the anchor, a robot will be anchor. The problem is as well, people are complaining that it will take people's jobs. Yeah. But if you look at it properly, then some countries might lose workforce to robots. But I don't think in Kenya we've gotten there yet. Okay. We need to just look at what is happening out there and try and fix our own issues first and pay a very keen lesson on what's happening. Okay. Yeah. So, Bichache Mark, looking at the government, the communication strategy, the way they've been relaying the messages to Kenyans out here, you mentioned something for the first time, it looks so organized. Are you satisfied?
Well, in terms of communication, you can never have satisfactory communication because that would mean that it's 100% efficient. Yes. And for me to be satisfied, I would have seen a lot less cars on Mombasa Road today because communication is not just about the messenger, it's also about how it is received and consumed. Now, the fact that many Kenyans are not yet getting it tells you that the communication is not complete. Okay. Now you can blame both the recipient and the sender for that thing, but where it is getting to now, I can predict for you that Fanya Fuje Uone will be the reaction, the final communication that Kenyans will have to receive to know that this thing is serious. And why am I saying this? Because let's remember, states have monopoly of violence. Let's be very clear. And these are emergency times, okay? So I'm just going to tell my Kenyan brothers who like to tempt and test the waters. Tomorrow evening, don't try. Because I can tell you that police officer is as afraid of corona as you. So he doesn't want to touch you. Sure. So he like to touch you with something else quickly. And that will keep the 1.5 meter distance as well. Okay. No, I'm just telling you. That's the reality. And
Robert alikuwa anasema fimbo ya jembe.
But he has the right to do that because guess what? If that police officer does not do that, then that healthcare worker in Kerugoya without protective clothing will have to deal with you and your corona. So we'd rather stop you from misbehaving than otherwise. So the arsenal which the national government has to employ in terms of communicating to Kenyans has to be full. I liked what I saw when various administration officers were going out in the streets and telling people to go home. And that's the truth because, you know, Kenya is a funny country. Kenya is a country where everyone will say they are not employed. And they'll say between 40 and 60% depending on who you're asking. But they leave their house every day to go where exactly? You know, and that's where we need to go back to and why this curfew is important. People have to ask themselves the question, do I need to be in town? Absolutely. Do I need to be at the shopping center? Do I need to be the makanga who's sitting outside the matatu calling people and harassing people to get into the matatu? Those are the questions that we need to ask. And as I said, communication is both verbal and non-verbal. Kesho jioni people might see non-verbal communication. Yes.
Interesting.
This culture of haki yetu, when guys crowd in an area and start saying haki yetu, even if you see a police horse ni haki yako, it should change completely.
Okay.
People should just be disciplined.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't have to be pushed by a policeman or forces into your house.
Okay.
And for me, I will resonate with my two colleagues here that we don't have to wait for matters of life and death for us to be pushed
to take action.
To take action, to be given such stringent measures that will even make us have a feeling of such excruciating, pain as a result of being beaten. Imagine we have people who are in the hospital, they are suffering from corona, they are really praying that they get out of the hospital, and for you are being forced.
Absolutely.
For your health, for you to be able to keep safe.
Okay.
It is very unfortunate, and I think we just need to get out of that habit. We just need to get out of such indisciplined cases. Do things right.
Okay.
We are not mad men and women of this country. We just need to behave. We need to oblige and to the simple rules and regulations that we have been given. It is your health. It is my health. It is the health of every other person.
It is important because I've gotten a lot of inboxes from people. Employers are another bottleneck. Employers who are refusing to stick to safety guidelines at work, employers who are refusing to have their staff work from home, employers who are refusing to provide hand sanitizers, water, and things like that. Let me tell you, profit is not that important. Even before the government said anything, I sent my staff home, and they're getting paid because guess what? Their lives are more important than my pocket. That's another thing that Kenyans need to change. This profit-minded over life thing does not work.
Robert, your last sentiments?
Yeah, I think that's right. Employees, employers, everyone just needs to take precautions, and let's see how it goes, because for sure that is the only thing that is going to make this disease.
All right. Just before we wrap up, I'll just sample some of your SMSs. And thank you very, very much, Bwana Mark. And you say, I agree with Mark Bichachi on his economic recovery strategy. I hope government economists are listening and thinking hard. Economic recovery is possible following the impact of a pandemic. Of course, Dennis from Dandora. About the tax doesn't help me at all more than I'm working every day. I thank the Almighty for all that the best. And of course, Matthew Rangi says, what's the difference between a curfew and a lockdown, which will flatten the pandemic curve faster? Maybe that can be answered by, of course, Mark Bichachi. And someone else here, mimi ni mtu dhahabu na sidanganyi na Mungu original ameniambia mambo. Hey. Superstitions here. Anyway, guys, that's all we had for you right here on Tipping Point. My name is Nick Mudimba. On behalf of our producer, Giverson Maina, I must say we'll meet again next week, same place, same time. And national issues can't be actually exhausted in 1 hour. My name is Nick Mudimba. Good night.